He wants it bad.
As a president, you have to have immunity.
And if Trump gets it, this is next.
Terrible, terrible path that they're leading us to. And it's very possible that it's going to happen to them.
Revenge does take time, I will say that.
It does.
And sometimes revenge can be justified.
Make no mistake, if Trump wins, there will be revenge. And Michael Cohen should know.
I am ashamed of my weakness and my misplaced loyalty, of the things I did for Mr. Trump in an effort to protect and promote him. I am ashamed that I chose to take part in concealing Mr. Trump's illicit acts rather than listening to my own conscience. I am ashamed because I know what Mr. Trump is. He is a racist, he is a con man, and he is a cheat.
Cohen went to prison for acting out some of Trump's schemes against others. Then he stood up with everything at stake for him, and he told the truth. So what's next for Michael Cohen?
What do you think happens to you if he wins?
Well, I'm out of here. I mean, I'm already working on a foreign passport with a completely different name. I don't know how it's going to work as far as dealing with my wife and my children. I certainly don't want them moving to where I'm looking to go. But I don't think yourself, the president of MSNBC, General Milley, Liz Cheney, how many people has he turned around and said that these are people that I intend to go after if I have the ability to? And the worst is the Supreme Court's recent decision that gave him immunity, presidential immunity. Now he thinks it's not only is it I can do whatever I want, but I can't even be prosecuted. It's a get out of jail free card solely for the president.
So you're out of here. You'd leave the country.
I have no choice.
Trump is a psychopath. Dozens of shrinks agree his personality is prime for enacting revenge against those who oppose him. The only thing that was standing in his way was the law and the courts. But now?
The Supreme Court delivered a heavy blow to special counsel Jack Smith's election interference case against former President Donald Trump, ruling along partisan lines that Trump has broad immunity for acts taken while he was in office.
This will be referred to from now on as a landmark opinion of the Supreme Court. It's not only important for President Trump's criminal case, they really have set a framework for all future presidents.
In August 2023, a federal grand jury indicted Trump in an unprecedented criminal case, charging the former president with 4 crimes related to his alleged attempts to overturn the 2020 election.
Donald Trump's defense team puts forward this argument that a former president should be held completely immune from prosecution for any of the acts that they performed while in office.
You have to have immunity. Very simple.
After a lower court rejected Trump's immunity claims, the former president appealed, and on July 1st, the Supreme Court gave him a sweeping amount of protection against criminal prosecution.
The court's very explicit about this. It lays out its framework by saying, quote, "The nature of presidential power entitles a former president to absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for actions within his conclusive and preclusive constitutional authority." What the court is saying in this part is quite surprising. They're basically saying that nothing he does in terms of pressuring the Justice Department to investigate whoever he wants to investigate as president can ever be subject to criminal liability.
The Supreme Court conveniently left out which crimes Trump has or will commit fall under his official duties. One thing they left out was treason. But as we heard from the tapes in the Supreme Court, should Trump want to kill a political opponent, that might just be okay.
If the president decides that his rival is a corrupt person and he orders the military or orders someone to assassinate him, is that within his official acts that for which he can get immunity?
It would depend on the hypothetical, but we can see that could well be an official act.
Trump has promised to attack political opponents, as Cohen said, and the media and other individuals. So how would that work?
And so this is one of those opinions that says to America, it says to every high school history student in America, you're not crazy. It's what you thought.
Yes,
it's what we've always thought for the entire history of the Republic. This is the way it is. And if we think back to the beginning of this case, there wasn't a single legal pundit, there wasn't anybody in the right wing anywhere saying, oh, well, you can't indict him. He's completely immune. This notion had never even been advanced by anyone until Trump's lawyers decided to advance it in this case.
Look, this is really simple. The idea of law or justice or freedom sound like bedrock notions, but these are not made of stone or steel. They're simply concepts, like freedom. The military will tell you this: freedom isn't free. Now, that may sound corny, but visit Moscow and start calling Putin a punk. See what happens.
We don't take an oath to a religion. We don't take an oath to a king or a queen or to a tyrant or a dictator. And we don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator.
I want to be a dictator.
These laws and principles have no strength except for the belief that we should embrace and act in accordance with them. It's like crossing the street with a walk sign. We trust that the cars will stop. But what happens when drivers decide to ignore those signs? Welcome to America.
And then on Saturday, seemingly out of nowhere, called for the suspension of the Constitution as yet another attempt to overturn the 2020 election.
The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies.
Harris is right. And for the record, with the exception of Cheney, Kinzinger, Romney, and a dozen or so more, Republicans are all in. But all in for what? Well, Trump has promised this.
If I win, we will treat those people from January 6th fairly. We will treat them fairly. And if it requires pardons, we will give them pardons.
In accordance with the tenets of Project 2025, Trump will fire government workers and replace them with his cronies, and more specifically, those who rushed the Capitol looking to kill Pelosi and Pence. If Trump becomes president, he's already promised to sign and enforce an abortion ban and close the Department of Education. Education?
The professors are the enemy. So much of what we want to do in this movement in this country, I think, are fundamentally dependent on going through a set of very hostile institutions, specifically the universities, which control the knowledge in our society. Because I think if any of us want to do the things that we want to do for our country and for the people who live in it, we have to honestly and aggressively attack the universities in this country.
But the one aspect of immunity we should really fear is that this mentally crippled sociopath will attack any and all who have defied him.
Do you regret not locking her up? And if you're president again, will you lock people up?
Well, I'll give you an example. The answer is you have no choice because they're doing it to us.
The Constitution says treason is punishable by death. You've accused your adversaries of treason. Who specifically are you accusing of treason?
Well, I think a number of people. If you look at Comey, if you look at McCabe, if you look at probably people higher than that, if you look at Strzok, if you look at his lover, Lisa Page, it's a Democrat charging his opponent. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. That means that if I win and somebody wants to run against me, I call my attorney general. I say, listen, indict him.
Trump also promised to attack MSNBC.
According to the 3 dissenting Supreme Court justices, is that Donald Trump is above the law.
Former president's been found absolutely immune, which is a really scary thought.
Doesn't that mean the president, any president here, is being given overt carte blanche from the court, that he or she can tell the Justice Department to do anything for any reason? Because if so, among other things, Richard Nixon would like his presidency back, please.
We fought a revolutionary war to break free from the kingdom of England and the absolute rule of a king or a queen.
Absolute immunity for presidents from criminal prosecution for official acts is a completely invented legal right.
Whatever your thoughts on Michael Cohen, he's a former attorney and he knows Trump well.
What is different in terms of the guy you knew and worked for and the guy you see running for president in 2024?
Donald has become the absolute worst version of himself imaginable. And I often get asked this question and people say, how? Why? He was always bad, don't get me wrong. But this is a whole new low by this man. And it's not that he's even thinking about this all on his own. He has surrounded himself with the worst of the worst imaginable. The Steve Bannons, the Steve Millers, the Jason Millers, right? These are the worst of the worst who have the Shady Vance, the whole group of them. The whole group of them. They are a whole group of racists and sexists. We know that they're misogynistic, they're xenophobic, they're homophobic, they're Islamophobic, they're transphobic, they're anti-Semitic. What else can you possibly be?
If Trump wins, he can order audits, arrests, shut down the media, use the military against U.S. citizens, deport U.S. citizens. He can ignore Congress and federal courts and even hand our country over to Putin.
Putin's a killer. A lot of killers. We got a lot of killers. Why you think our country's so innocent?
And if Trump gets back in power, who will stop him? These two humps?
We do have breaking news this morning. Sources telling CNN that the January 6th committee will likely reach out to the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas here in the coming weeks. This happens after text messages between Ginny Thomas and then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows showed her urging President Trump's team to continue the big lie.
If Trump wins, we will be on our own. And while the light says it's safe to walk, if I were you, I'd look both ways.
Goddamn right.
I'm ready. Let's go.
This isn't their Republican Party anymore.
Who's with me?
I don't want to talk about this stuff.
Am I wrong?
Yes.
Tick-tock.
You're in a lot of trouble, Donnie.
I think he's crazy.
I'm Chip Franklin.